A very useful feature in the early stages of a design project, when you don't actually have the copy yet, but you already have roughly an idea how much copy you will have to place into your designs, is to use the placeholder text in Photoshop. The way it works is very simple. You create a text frame, like this one here at the bottom, and then from the type menu, you choose Paste Lorem Ipsum. So once you do that, you will be able to fill in your frame with that text. And of course, the more place you give for the text, then the more you will see from it. So let me just make this a little bit bigger. You can see once I drag it further down, I can see more of that text. And this text actually is the lorem ipsum, which is like a dummy text. It doesn't mean anything. It looks like Latin, but it doesn't really make sense. But it's very good for just creating a placeholder text for anything that you will later on replace with the final copy. Even though Photoshop is mainly used for 2D, we can use a couple of 3D effects, and we can use them also on our text layers. So all you need to do is to select a layer, right click on it, and then from the bottom you can choose two types of 3D effects. You can choose the postcard option and the 3D extrusion. Let's just choose first of all postcard. This will turn the selected layer into a 3D layer, but it will still keep it as a two-dimensional flat surface. So here in the panels you can see we have a 3D layer. So that little cube shows that it's turned into 3D. And in the 3D panel, make sure you have the current view selected. And then all you need to do is to have the rotate the 3D object option selected, and then you can move your view around, or you can also select the object and move that around. So as you can see, it's still a flat surface, but I can move it in a three-dimensional space. So that's already an interesting option which we can do. And this was the postcard effect. Let me just leave this text somewhere here like that. And then I'm going to go back to my layers, and I select the other part of the text, the boarding, and I'm going to right click on that and choose new 3D extrusion from selected layer. If I choose that option, then I will have a depth on my text as well. So I can select that object and I can move it around or rotate it around, and we can see we have a depth on this as well. And to be able to control the depth or the extrusion itself, you need to just select the object itself, and then here you can find the extrusion depth. So you can increase that or you can decrease it. And once you are ready, you can just simply select another tool, and then you can always use the move tool to move the object around. So you can select this option, and then you can move the whole 3D object around in space. You can even rotate it around. And once you are ready, you just select another tool and see how it looks, how it ended up. But the great thing about using these 3D layers is that you can always go back to them and you can make edits. So for example, with this one here, the postcard effect, I can still rotate it around. So I can still use it and then create an interesting effect where I have these two texts working together, but clearly they are in a 3D space. So something like that already gives it an interesting effect. And then from the layers, if I select these two together and use the move tool, I can still position them easily. The only thing I can't use from this point on is the free transform tool. For that to be able to use, I will have to turn these layers into smart objects. Whenever you use type in Photoshop, you either create a paragraph or a point type. If you just simply click with your text tool or type tool, you create a point type. But if you click and drag, then you create a paragraph type. Now, once you created a type layer, and in this case here, this one on the top is a point type, you will still be able to convert that into the other version, in this case into a paragraph text. The advantage of having a paragraph text is that you can create boundaries, And within those boundaries, your text will automatically break and align to. So you can even use like left, center, or right align or justified text. While if you have a point type like this one here, then it will never automatically break the line, and you won't be able to really use alignment on it either. So what can you do in these cases if you decide to turn it into a paragraph type? Well, all you need to do is make sure that you are not in type editing mode. So you can have the layer selected, but make sure that you are not editing the text itself. And you can always press escape or command or control return to accept changes and exit the text editing mode. And once you have the type tool selected, you can right click on your text and then you can choose convert to paragraph text. Once you do that and you click on it, next time you will see that you have a frame around your text, which means now it can be adjusted easily. So you can choose different leading, for example. I will talk about the keyboard shortcuts soon, but you can easily do this, or you can realign it back to one line. And just like turning point type into paragraph type, you can do it vice versa as well. So once again, I right click and now I will have the option convert to point text. So once I choose that, again, I will end up having point text once more. So in these cases, if I want to break the line, I have to manually break it and use enter or return to do that. And similarly, to switch between the paragraph and point type, we can also switch between the horizontal and vertical text, for which we have two separate tools here in Photoshop, these tools, so the horizontal and vertical type tools. But it's not a problem if you don't use them straight away. You can type horizontally and then right click with the type tool and switch to vertical text. So once you choose that, then your text will be written vertically. So that's also another option which you have, and once again this also works back and forth. So again, I can click on it and by using the type tool, right click, and I can switch back to horizontal. So both of these are completely non-destructive, both having type set into point or paragraph type, and the horizontal vertical option is something that you can easily update later on. There are several ways to apply color to a text layer. First of all, you can always just simply replace the color by double clicking on the thumbnail of the type layer. That should already select the text itself. And then from the control bar or options bar here on the top, you can change the color of the text quite easily. So that's one way of doing it. But there's also another way, by simply having the layer selected and just pick a color from the toolbar. Let's just set this to something blue, a brighter blue color, and then use the keyboard shortcut Alt or Option Backspace. And that will also fill the color in to the whole text layer. Or if you select a part of the text, you can also use the same keyboard shortcut to use the foreground color and fill that in. Or you can also use Command or Control Backspace, and that will fill in the text with the background color, which in my case was white. And if you want to change the color with a style, you can also do that by double clicking on the layer and choose Color Overlay. And then the color will be an effect which you can turn off or turn it back on. Plus you can also change the blend mode of that effect. So that can make it even more interesting than just simply applying a color, because in these cases you have a little bit of more options to play around with your additional color. Another feature which you will find also in Illustrator is to turn the text into outlines. Basically to create paths or vector shapes from your text. That means you won't be able to edit your text, but it will still be in a vector format. So it will be still resolution independent. The way you can do that is by right-clicking on the layer and choose Convert to Shape. So once you choose that, then the layer will turn into a vector shape layer. and then you will be able to select each individual character if you want to. So you can make sure you have the layer selected, and then you can click on any of the letters and you can move them around easily. You can also use the free transform tool to turn them around, or you can also use the direct selection tool, which is the white arrow tool. So you can select that one, and then once you make a selection of a part of the text, I just selected the top part of W, you can always move that separately. So I can, for example, move that all the way up here to the top of the page. And I can do all kinds of changes like this to my text after I turned it into a vector shape. So remember, you won't be able to turn it back into an editable text after this point, but it will give you a little bit more ways of editing your text. So you can even add another element, a vector shape, into it, like the rectangle tool, and make sure you set that to the subtract front and then just draw into your text, and then it will remove or hide that part of your text. And the great thing about this, using vector shapes, is that you can always go back and make changes to it. So you can drag it down or drag it up and play around with the effect itself. Another very useful thing to do with type layers in Photoshop is to turn them into smart objects. Whenever you have a type layer inside a smart object, it will still be editable, but you will be able to use smart filters and even perspective distortions without having the need to turn the text into a raster layer. So by keeping editability, you can add a lot of interesting effects. All you need to do is make sure you right-click on the layer and choose Convert to Smart Object. And once you did that, you can go to the filter menu and choose from lots of options here. I just would like to mention that both the 3D options and also these smart filters, most of them, are only available if you are in RGB color mode. So the 3D options and some of these filters here will only be available if you are in RGB mode. That's just one thing I wanted to make sure you know about. So for example, we can go to the distort options and choose twirl. We can change the amount or the direction of this twirl, and once we click on OK, it will be applied to the text itself. And as you can see, it's a completely non-destructive way of doing this distortion, because I can always turn it off, or I can also double click on it and make changes to it, so change the angle, for example. But let me show you another thing. If I turn this off and use the free transform tool while we have a smart object, I can hold down Command or Control on PC and create these kind of distortions, like perspective distortions. And if I press enter, I accepted it, and it looks similar to a 3D effect. But the great thing is that whenever I press Command T, I will still be able to move this back into place. So I will never lose control over the original text. So that's another thing what you can do with using smart objects on text. And just to show you, you can always double click on the smart objects thumbnail to be able to edit the text. So here you can always make selections and change the text, change its color, or whatever you want to do. So working with smart objects and text together can really give you more options and flexibility. Using keyboard shortcuts with type is another very important thing, because there's so many things you can do faster if you use these shortcuts. So first of all, how to select text. When you have the type tool, you can either double click on the thumbnails of the layer's thumbnail to make a quick selection, or you can also double click on any of the words to select that quickly. If you click 3 times, that will select a row. If you click 4 times, that will select a paragraph. Once you have your cursor flashing in the text and you want to quickly jump to the next word, you can use Command or Control right and left arrows. So that will quickly jump between words. And if you want to make a selection quickly, you can hold down Shift and then use right and left arrows, depending on which direction you want to make the selection. You can also combine this, do two keyboard shortcuts together. So Control or Command Shift together will jump between words and make selections. Once you have a paragraph selected, for example, you can change the alignment of your text. Command Shift L or Control Shift L is aligned to left, and then the same modifiers but with R is aligned to right, with C aligned to center, and J justify. Holding down Alt and pressing up and down arrows, you can increase and decrease leading, which is the distance between lines. Alt right and left arrow will change the tracking, which is the distance between characters. And having a word selected, for example this one, and holding down Alt Shift and up and down arrow, you can change the baseline shift. So you can shift it from its baseline up or down. If you want to change the size of a text, also hold down Control or Command Shift and full stop to increase the size and comma to decrease the size. And still using the same modifiers, Command or Control and Shift, B will set it to bold, I will set it to italic, and using U will add an underline. So Command or Control or Shift U, I, and B can also remove these effects. And another very useful keyboard shortcut is to accept the changes that you added is holding down Command or Control and press Return or Enter, and that will accept the changes. If you don't want to accept them, just press Escape. Character and paragraph styles in Photoshop can save you a lot of time, especially if you use a lot of text in your designs. So let's just say I would like to use a style for these characters. As you can see, I have them in separate text layers. So 2, 0, 1, and 4, they are all separate layers because I had to divide them up in this design. So to be able to make sure I can quickly update the style of these characters, I'm going to create a character style for them. So I go to the window menu and choose Character Styles, which will open up that panel, and I define a new style. I'm going to call this Date. So that's going to be the Date style, and I'm going to choose a different font. I'm going to use Arial Black, and I'm going to have a look at this, how it looks. Okay, I quite like that. So now if I select the other three layers, 0, 1, 4, I can just simply click on Date in the Character Styles panel and click on this icon here, which is going to clear the overrides on these layers. So once I do that, that character style will be applied to these layers as well. So now I can move them around quickly, just select them and move them around. Make sure they are in the center of those little shapes, like that. And now if I want to, I can double click on the style itself. So this is the style definition, and I can select any kind of font family and see immediately how it's going to look like in all of my layers. So if I find something better than the other one, then I can just simply accept this and it automatically updates in all the 4 instances or all 4 layers. And the same way you can also create paragraph styles, which can be assigned to whole paragraphs instead of just simply characters. Another very useful tool to work with together with type is the pen tool and the vector shape tools, because you can set the text along a path or inside a vector shape. So let's have a look first at the pen tool. So with the pen tool, I can simply just draw something. Let's just draw a line here, which then turns back, just following those shapes on the design. Once I have this and I switch to the type tool, I can click on this path and I can start typing. The only thing I have to make sure is the end point is set all the way to the end of the path, and the start point is at the start. You can always move these around, these X's. There's actually a circle at the end and an X in the beginning. You can move them around very easily by holding down Command. So if I start typing now or use the placeholder text from the type menu, paste lorem ipsum, you can see my text will follow the path itself. And of course, we can draw curved paths as well with the pen tool. So I can draw something like this. And once again, if I click on it with the type tool, I can start typing on this curved shape as well. And when you have the type tool selected and you click on the text, so you edit it, you can always hold down Command and Control and drag it upside down as well, your text, and you can move it around the path very easily as well. So holding down Command and Control while you have the text in edit mode, you can easily move things around on your paths. But you can also use shapes, like I'm going to use the polygon tool and set to the path mode. I'm just going to draw a hexagon, following again the design. And then once I switch to the type tool, it will again show me a different cursor with which if I click on this shape, I can again paste in text. So I'm just going to choose paste lorem ipsum again, and I can always make this smaller, set it to center, and see how it looks. So if I select the shape itself and I use free transform on that, the text will follow the changes once I accept the change on the vector shape. So using the pen tool and the vector shapes in Photoshop together with text, again, just increases the options that you have for your designs. And last but not least, you can also create CSS code directly in Photoshop from your text layers. And this option is again only available in RGB mode. But all you need to do is to make sure you have the text selected. Like let's just select this layer here. If I right click on it here in the layers panel, I can choose the copy CSS option. And once I have that, I can open a text editor application and I can just paste in the CSS code. We can see that it has all the attributes, the size, the color, the font family, and the text itself here on the top. So if you have a CSS code, you just copy this into it and you already can use it on your website the way it looked like in Photoshop. So that's all I wanted to show you in this collective tutorial. I hope you liked all of these features, and I hope I managed to show you some new things that you haven't tried before, which will help you in your work. Thanks a lot for your attention, and see you next time here on Tuts Plus.